How are you? My name is Stanisław Barszczak. This time I am sending here the recently read story titled In Search of a Legendary Treasure. Dear young friends, cares from the bottom of the river Selenga, Siberia, a Pole who knew too much about the great treasure. You can read this text in 6 minutes of Ferdynand Antoni Ossendowski, a legend of the golden treasure and the curse. Was Ferdynand Ossendowski killed by the curse of the legendary treasure? You may hear this story now. First, I would like to tell you about the Polish-Turkish War of 1672 till 1676. The year is 1672. Michał Korybut-Wiśniowiecki is the king in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In the summer of 1972, Poland was attacked by powerful Turkish forces. The country was not prepared for an attack, as the king, nobility, and magnates were involved in mutual disputes. The army was small and the cities and castles unprepared for defense. The defense of Trembowla fortress is an extraordinary episode of the Polish-Turkish War at that time. The Turks managed to capture the mighty Kamieniec-Podolski fortress and other castles, but not Trembowla. A woman, Anna Dorota Chrzanowska, stood in their way. She did not allow the fortress to be surrendered, and also took an active part in its defense. But Kamieniec-Podolski fell. On December 10, 1671, the envoy of Sultan Mehmed IV came to Poland. He demanded that the Republic of Poland be humbled from the might of the Ottoman Empire. His visit foreshadowed the war with Turkey. The threat from the Cossack, Tatars, and Turks required a response. That is why the king called a parliament. However, during it, Korybut-Wiśniowiecki was unable to control the reluctant nobility. Therefore, the parliament, Sejm, was dissolved without passing money for an imminent war. Meanwhile, while in Poland there was unproductive discussion and the nobility was reluctant to pass taxes for the war, Turkey attacked. Her army managed to conquer the fortress in Kamieniec-Podolski, which was considered unpregnable, which fell on August 27, 1672. The Turkish army estimated at over 100,000 soldiers. The castle was shelled by cannons. One of the bullets hit the ammunition depot, causing an explosion in the walls of the fortress. This allowed the Turks to make an assault attempt, which was repelled by the defenders. The Turks suffered significant losses during the attack. However, they started to excavate to blow up the fortification of Kamieniec-Podolski. When Turkish miners blew up the old castle's tower, the troops again launched an assault that was barely repelled. The soldiers of Mehmed IV, however, continued to do the digging. It was only a matter of time before the castle fell and the slaughter of its defenders and inhabitants. Therefore, the commander of the defense, Mikołaj Potocki decided to surrender the castle. The Poles left Kamieniec on August 13. A few days later, the Grand Turkish Vizier entered ceremoniously. Then the cities and castles of Buchacz, Zborów, and Złoczów fell. Only Lviv did not succumb to Turkish power, which was largely due to the expedition of Hetman John Sobieski, who defeated the Tatars troops which were moving deeper and deeper into Polish territory. During this expedition, he also liberated tens of thousands of people from the Jaser. Upon the news of the fall of Kamieniec, the king began to send pleading letters to Pope Clemens X, Emperor Leopold I, and even Tsar Alexei. This, however, remained unanswered. In addition, the king was heavily fought by the nobility, and he was an undecided person himself. The ruler's lack of decision making and charisma with the nobility unable to put the country's interest above their own were the reason for the shameful peace treaty in Buchacz on the Strype River. And this time, the royal commissioners signed it on October 18, 1972 on behalf of the monarch. Unable to raise an army, the king decided in the face of the Turkish power that the only way to avoid a total defeat was to conclude a peace treaty. His decisions were more than exorbitant for Poland. In accordance with the provisions of the peace concluded in Buchacz, Turkey was gaining the following provinces: Podolskie, Wrocławskie, and the southern part of the right bank Kiev province. In addition, Poland undertook to 22,000 thalers annually, tribute thalers, in exchange for keeping the peace. The amount was significant, but at the same time the consent to the tribute placed Poland in the role of the vassal of the Ottoman Empire. In addition, the treaty guaranteed impunity for all those who switched to the side of Turkey. The peace itself was called shameful and humiliating. Only the conditions of peace in Buchacz sobered the nobility. Firstly, it refused to ratify the treaty, and secondly, it finally passed taxes for the war, as I said. This time the army was successfully deployed. The already ailing king inspected it on October 8, 1973 in Skwarzawa. The forces were impressive as they numbered 4,000 troops and 50 guns. Defense of the Polish Commonwealth. On November 11, 1673, this army led by Sobieski won a splendid victory at Chocim. The Poles managed to completely destroy the Turkish army in this battle. This in turn, in the face of horrible death on the eve of the battle, opened the way to the Polish front for Sobieski. In 1676, a truce was concluded in Żurawno. Under it, Poland regained part of Podolia, but without the Kamieniec fortress. It returned to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1699 of the treaty concluded in Karlovice. So, the history of the Republic of Poland is strange. The legend of the brightest republic of both Polish and Lithuanian nations still dominates the minds and spirit of Poles. From this perspective, let's look at the curse at the bottom of the Selenga River in Buryatia, in faraway Siberia. 100 years ago, Selenga River area in Buryatia, Siberia, very beautiful places, untouched nature, almost, water medium transparency. Drinking is not recommended. It is very foggy. Some channels and streams that feed it are completely dry. There was a Pole who knew too much about the great treasure at the bottom of the Selenga River, as I mentioned it. Was Ferdynand Ossendowski killed by the curse of the legendary treasure? Before becoming a popular writer, Ossendowski led an adventurous lifestyle. He knew Chinese and Mongolian, reached the Far East. After the revolution, he took the side of Tsarism and met the charismatic Roman Ungern von Sternberg, Bloody Baron. Thanks to this, he allegedly had knowledge of the place where the great treasure was hidden, and the clue was to be included in one of his books. But the secret was kept by a curse. Ferdynand Antoni Ossendowski is one of the most mysterious figures in Polish literature. Already during his lifetime, there were many legends about him. A graduate of the University of St. Petersburg and the Paris Sorbonne, a writer, traveler, scientist and spy, lecturer at the universities, and a soldier and an adventurer looking for adventure, was one of the most popular authors of pre-war Poland. His adventures fired the imaginations of thousands of readers, and the sensational autobiographical story about the journey through Siberia entitled Through the Land of People, Animals and Gods. This book has become a world bestseller. It has been translated into several dozen foreign languages and over 100 editions all over the world. It is said that between the lines of this book, Ossendowski hid the key to finding one of the greatest and most valuable treasures in the world. Ossendowski's whole life is shrouded in mystery. He has come close to death dozens of times. He didn't care about life, as if he knew he was going to get out of trouble. When the revolution broke out in Russia, he sided with the Tsarist regime without hesitation, as I mentioned. Wanted by the Bolshevik political police, he had to flee to the east of the world. Thanks to his knowledge of the countries of Central Asia and excellent knowledge of languages including Chinese and Mongolian, he managed to reach China. In the steppes of Asia, he met Alexander Kolchak. Kolchak was an admiral, the latter admiral, in the Tsarist army, a famous polar explorer, and one of the commanders of the Wild Guard that fought the Bolshevik during the Russian Civil War. When Kolchak's army was defeated, the Polish traveled through Mongolia towards British possessions in the south of China. Then, while crossing Mongolia, fate gave him another extraordinary figure. I thought about it. Baron Roman Ungern von Sternberg, a German nobleman from Estonia and an officer in the Tsarist army, was a descendant of Livonian pirates, a mystic and cruel commander. He was called the Bloody Baron. In Mongolia, which he briefly liberated from the hands of the Bolsheviks, he was considered a hero. Some worshipped him like a god, others feared him like a demon. Ungern, fascinated by Eastern Buddhism and culture, wanted to create a great Mongolian state that he would lead like Genghis Khan himself. Familiarization with Ossendowski was convenient for Ungern. The Polish traveler knew the Mongolian language and the geography of Asia and could prove very helpful in the implementation of the Baron's fantastic plan. Ossendowski quickly became Ungern's trusted advisor. It was then, and there are legends about it, that he was to learn about the fantastically expensive deposit. After the outbreak of the civil war in Russia, the property of Tsar Nicholas II, which included, among others, the resources of silver and gold, its weight was estimated at 1,200 to 1,600 tons, fell into the hands of the Bolsheviks, and the sum of it was regained by Admiral Kolchak. Then a significant part of these goods went to Ungarn. The Baron also recovered valuables stolen in Lamite monasteries from the Bolsheviks. According to another scientist who have been following the treasure trail for years, there were about 2,000 priceless statues of Lamite deities covered with gold, jasper, lapis lazuli, nephrite, and agate, snow boxes, and diamonds, some of the size of a small child feast. The multi-million-dollar value of the treasure was also made up of chests of gold coins constituting the cash register of the White Guard. In addition, Ungarn confiscated the overdue contribution from China from Mongolia with silver deposits. In 1920, who lived in Manchuria, Kazimierz Grochowski estimated the value of the treasury at approximately 20 million United States dollars. Ungarn was to hide the whole in a place only known to itself, in the vastness of Mongolia. Ossendowski, on the other hand, never denied rumors that he had learned the secret of one of the greatest and most valuable treasures. Ungarn did not manage to escape the Bolshevik onslaught. The Baron knew, however, that he would die. Ossendowski writes that in one of the Mongolian villages, a Buddhist Lama predicted Ungarn that he would die in 136 days. The most amazing thing was the Mongolian shamans independently confirmed it. Ungarn was said to be sure that the curse would be fulfilled, and he was not afraid of death, so he did not bow to the bullets, which clearly avoided him even in the greatest heat of battle. Time passed in no time relentlessly. The day of the prophecy has finally come. On September 15, 1921, an execution took place. The Russians shot the hated commander. With his death and fantastic plan to rebuild the great Mongolian state was buried. The Dalai Lama, the ruler of Tibet, proclaimed Ungarn the incarnation of the guardian of the Dharma, who in Tibetan beliefs defend the followers of Buddhism from his enemies. A burden of a secret, Ossendowski managed to return to Poland. Meanwhile, he described and published his Asian adventures. He didn't officially mention the treasure Ungarn had hidden. He only stated that in one of his books there is a photograph of the place where the gold is hidden. Dark clouds hung over his life. He was going to live forever. He joked so often among the regulars of Warsaw Saloon. He sometimes mentioned to more trusted people that the date of his death has already been set. It turned out that when he was with Ungarn in one of the Mongolian villages, the Lama revealed not only the date of the Baron's death, he also predicted the details of Ossendowski's death. The Pole, however, was to die only when Baron Ungarn reminded him of it. In the case of Ungarn, the prophecy came true. Ossendowski was left to wait. The writer avoided publicity. In 1944, he left Warsaw and from that time lived in a small manor house in Żółwin near Warsaw. His life became a complete mystery. Although he was in the prime of his life, he closed in on himself. He broke off all contacts as if he were waiting to die. When a dark Opel arrived on Opel car, on January 2nd, 1945, Ossendowski went outside without hesitation. The young officer introduced himself. "My name is Unger von Sternberg." Who was the secret officer? It is not known to this day. Some Russian authors claim that the officer was Wehrmacht Lieutenant Askold von Ungern-Sternberg, the Baron's grandson. He suggested finding the treasure together. He only wanted diamonds for himself, and Ossendowski was to keep the gold. The writer replied to the visitor that he could only smell the smoke of the diamonds because no one could get them out. Unger's descendant left disappointed. The next day, Ossendowski was dead. He died on a stomach trouble. A legend began to circulate that there was a curse over the treasure. On the night of January 17, 1945, NKVD officers came to the manor house in Żółwin. The accompanying soldiers surrounded the building, and the terrified inhabitants were let outside. They searched all the rooms. They were looking for the enemy of the people, Ferdynand Antoni Ossendowski. Due to the content of his famous book, Lenin, titled Lenin, which apart from the biography of the leader contained an extremely sharp criticism of the communist revolution, the author was included on the NKVD list. He had to be found and judged at all costs. The inhabitants of Żółwin told the officers about the writer's death. They didn't believe it. They left a few soldiers on guard and went with a local grave digger to the cemetery. There they dug a coffin with the body out of the frozen ground and opened the lid. The most senior officer compared the face of the deceased with the writer's photo. He even forcibly brought a dentist to make the final identification of the deceased. The dentist confirmed that it was Ferdynand Antoni Ossendowski. The scientists ordered to take some photos of the deceased and bury the coffin again. Since the mysterious death of Ossendowski, the Russians and Americans have been looking for the treasure. Earlier in the 1930s, Hitler also sent a special group of scientists to Asia. However, no one managed to find a trace of valuable. On the morning of, as I said, of January 2nd, 1945, a dark Opel car pulled up in front of the manor house in Żółwin, and German lieutenant got out of the car. He asked for the host and introduced himself. As I said, the next day, Antoni Ossendowski, who lived in Żółwin, died. Thus the curse was fulfilled. Before becoming a popular writer, Ossendowski led an adventurous lifestyle. I mentioned. He knew Chinese and Mongolian, reached the Far East. After the revolution, he took the side of Tsarism and met the charismatic Roman Ungern von Sternberg, Bloody Baron. Thanks to this, he allegedly had knowledge of the place where the great treasure was hidden. But the secret was kept by a curse. More such stories can be found on my homepage, sbarszczak2009.com in internet. Ferdynand Antoni Ossendowski. Dear beloved young friends, and what Jesus of Nazareth said, "Do not put treasures on the earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, breaking, and they will your heart be also. The eye is the light of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is sick, your whole body will be dark. So if the light in you is darkness, how great is what that darkness? No one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and Mammon. Beloved, I wish you a real adventure of hoarding treasures in heaven. Heaven is for real. There is the film by conductor Randall Wallace, 2014. You may watch this film on internet. Boy, son of the father, his name Colton, claims to have visited heaven during a near-death experience. He speaks about things that happened before his birth. Film recounts the true story of a small-town father who must find the courage and conviction to share his son's extraordinary, life-changing experience with the world. You must find the courage to say something you didn't know yet. Love your parent and yourself. It is very interesting for us. I wish you a real adventure. Enjoy your reading. I cordially greet you.